There's a new store in town. Is it a prepper's paradise or a total pit? Let's go find out. Hey guys, it's Jara with Wicked Prepared. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome if it's your first time. We're glad you found us. We just recently had a new store open up in our area. And when you live in a small town, it doesn't take much to excite you, so this was big news. I have to admit, my woman's heart was a little disappointed when I found out that it was a Harbor Freight instead of something like a Trader Joe's, an IKEA, a Target maybe, or even a Sam's Club. But I found a silver lining when I realized it might be a good place to find some prepping items. So we headed on over to take a look around and see what we could find. Let's go. The first thing we found was one place that Harbor Freight really shines, literally, and that is flashlights and other emergency lighting. It's very important to have light sources for emergencies and grid down situations, as well as portable options for your bug out gear and other kits, and lights to keep in your vehicles as well. Harbor Freight carries all sorts of flashlights, from very small, inexpensive, and less powerful options to bigger, heavier duty, and much brighter flashlights. They also have a good selection of my personal favorite, which is headlamps. Headlamps should be a part of everyone's emergency gear because they allow you to have the full use of your hands while still directing light at your work area. Even simple activities like cooking or even just playing cards to keep yourself occupied are much easier when you have your own personal light source that directs itself exactly where you're looking. Harbor Freight does have lanterns though for ambient lighting as well. We keep these small pop-up lanterns for all the members of our household, and we keep it right in our blackout box. Harbor Freight also has a good selection of batteries, which is crucial to stock up on if you have gear that needs them, like lights. Their prices on batteries are really good, which does make me question the quality possibly. Leave a comment below if you've ever used batteries from Harbor Freight and what your experience has been with them. Definitely grab a battery tester here so you can check your batteries easily. Take a look around because Harbor Freight also has a bunch of different types of lights for all different uses. They have work lights that are magnetic to stick exactly where you need them, some that hang, and even some that hang around your neck. These motion sensing battery lights would be great to place in bathrooms and near stairways, especially if you have kids in the home. I think they would even be great when it's not an emergency. For your vehicle emergency gear, I found this cool little light that charges in your cigarette lighter, and these magnetic triangle lights that have red and red flashing light options. These would be great to keep in your vehicle's emergency kit. A lot of these lights are very cheap, along with everything else at Harbor Freight, but remember, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's junk. I have one of these little blue work lights that my sister got for me many years ago at a Harbor Freight, and I still have it and it still works great. The moral of the story here is don't write something off just because it's cheap. I'd love it as we go along if you would leave some comments down below with different Harbor Freight items that you've liked and ones you haven't had the best of luck with, because I know there are some Harbor Freight items out there that people swear by. Some of the lights they have here are rechargeable, and they do also have some solar lighting options if you don't want to rely on batteries quite as much. Lots of people use these outdoor solar lights to light their property, but in an emergency situation, you can grab one or more of them out of the ground and bring them indoors to help light your home at night. Another kind of solar lights that they have are these outdoor solar security lights, and that leads me to my next category of prepping items that we found at Harbor Freight: home security. In an SHTF situation, it's going to be so vital to protect our homes and everything inside them. Outdoor security lights can help deter prowlers because they'll be surprised when they see a light flip on and they'll think someone knows they're there. It can also light the area so that you can see what's going on and be aware that something's going on out there. We also found various door and window alarms that were battery operated that might possibly spook an intruder to move on to an easier target, or at least alert you to the situation so you can react more quickly. Chains and padlocks can be used to secure property, gates, etc. Harbor Freight also carries various safes that can be used to safeguard valuable property or documents. They also have pepper spray that some people may choose to carry for some personal protection. Another area you can really cover at Harbor Freight is power generation. For shorter term situations, they have a good selection of gas generators, and I've actually heard some pretty decent things about these. You can also pick up things that you might need along with your generator, such as fuel cans, fuel stabilizer, and extension cords. For longer term situations, you can get solar power generation solutions at Harbor Freight. I've heard that they actually sell Jackery portable power stations, but our store doesn't seem to carry them. If that's not in your budget, we did find a whole line of solar power items that you can use to DIY your own solar power station. Everything from solar panels to batteries, cables, controllers, inverters, they have it all. Everything you would need. We also found some basic prepper survival gear at our Harbor Freight store. They had some various fixed blade and folding pocket knives, magnesium fire starters. They even had this whole emergency survival kit for only $30. This kit contains all of the items listed here, and they all come in a water-resistant storage case. There was also an empty peg in this section where it looks like they usually carry a multi-tool, which is something that every prepper likes to have. Harbor Freight also carries ammo cans, which besides the obvious, can also be used to store and organize many different preps. The metal ones could even be used in making a small Faraday cage to protect some of your electronics. They sell binoculars for reconnaissance, carabiners, and 5-gallon pails that do appear to be made of food-safe plastic. They also have lids for them. Harbor Freight has a very large selection of tarps of all different sizes and thicknesses. They also carry a selection of rope, tent stakes, and tarp clips that could all be valuable for shelter building or for temporary patching up of some storm damage to your home or really any kind of damage to your home and property. Another category of gear that every prepper should have that you can find at Harbor Freight is some PPE or personal protective equipment. Work gloves are very important to protect your hands when you're dealing with debris and other hazards after a disaster. Harbor Freight has a wide selection of work gloves of all kinds. We actually always bring a pair of welding gloves like these when we go camping to use when we're dealing with the campfire and other super hot things. Harbor Freight also has a large inventory of disposable nitrile, latex, and vinyl gloves that would be necessary when dealing with contamination in medical situations. Protective eye goggles should also be kept on hand for all of these reasons. And of course, various masks and even respirators with filters may be needed, and they do have these at Harbor Freight. A bright reflective safety vest is important. For example, if you go out to check damage and clear debris after a storm or some other event and the power's out, there's not going to be street lights, there's not going to be outdoor lights on the homes. You're going to want to be visible. And of course, rain gear as well. That's available at Harbor Freight and definitely important to have. Harbor Freight also has a minimal selection of safety items that we all should have in our homes at all times, but maybe grab an extra or some backups for emergency purposes. Smoke detector, carbon monoxide detector, and fire extinguisher. They just have one option of each really, but they do have them. We couldn't talk about Harbor Freight without talking about, of course, tools. The general consensus seems to be that the tools at Harbor Freight are not very good quality. However, there is something to be said for cheap tools that we can easily stock up on as backups, which preppers love to have. You got to have backups for your backups. Or if you're just starting out and you have very little supplies, you can get a lot of tools for not much money if you go for the cheap ones. And while they may not stand up to long-term strenuous use, they'll last for a while, at least get you through, and you can gradually start replacing them one at a time with higher quality, more expensive versions as your budget allows. But everyone should have a basic array of no-grid manual tools that can be used for repairs, home fortification, and different tasks like turning off utilities after an emergency if needed. There are also some larger tools that you can find at Harbor Freight that you will need in a grid down situation to do jobs that you would usually rely on power or gas-driven tools or power equipment to do. Things like axes, mauls, and hatchets they have here, and that's going to be needed to get firewood because that may be the only fuel available for cooking and heat after a disaster, especially a long-term situation. Manual saws are available here for other type of woodworking tasks. A large set of bolt cutters and pry bars could be helpful in many disaster and post-disaster scenarios. These could help get you into or out of a lot of places and situations. Bottle jacks, come-alongs, hoists, pulleys, and tow straps can make it possible for one or two men to lift, move, and manipulate large, heavy items and structures with only manpower. A manual transfer pump would be useful for transferring liquids, and a manual brake bleeder can be used with your vacuum sealer's mason jar attachments to seal jars when the power's out. This bicycle tire pump caught my eye because when I was a little girl growing up in a house without electricity or indoor plumbing, we had a shower rigged up that used a manual tire pump just like this to pressurize the tank of hot water that we heated on the stove. I remember being woken up early to work that pump so my dad could have a shower before work. In a long-term grid down situation, we may end up having to think outside the box like that. Not to mention that bicycles themselves are a good post-SHTF transportation method as well. Don't forget the little things that every prepper should have in their supplies. Things like super glue, duct tape, and zip ties, and of course, garbage bags. So important for containing waste, but so many more uses as well. You can also grab a few items for your car emergency kit that everyone should have. A set of these jumper cables would be a great thing to add, along with the lights that I mentioned earlier. And of all random things that they sell in Harbor Freight, they sell this hammock, which would be a good addition to your bug out or get home bag. One last thing that we noticed while we were at Harbor Freight were some of these wheeled items, such as a dolly, a wagon, and they even had a nice sturdy toolbox with wheels. So many times we get people who tell us that they would have trouble carrying their supplies if they had to evacuate or leave or move to a different area quickly. These are a few items that can make it a little bit easier if you did have to carry heavy gear to evacuate or bug out. By the time we were done, we were honestly surprised at the amount of prepping items that we found at Harbor Freight, especially the amount of solar power items and components. That's something that I don't think we could find locally available at any other store in our area. Something to remember, a store like Harbor Freight may not be a place that many people would think of to shop for prepping and emergency items. Those are often the last places to be picked over after an emergency or disaster, when places like Walmart are usually mobbed and emptied very early on. So it might be a place to keep tucked away in your brain if you ever do need some last-minute items in the wake of an event. Just as important as the prepping items we did find at Harbor Freight are the items that we didn't find. Most notably, food and water. Two of the most important items to prep were pretty much non-existent at Harbor Freight. I also didn't see any canning jars or canning supplies. Hardware stores are usually a good place to look for those items, but not at Harbor Freight. So this is definitely not a one-stop, do-it-all prepping place, but it is a good place to find certain things if you happen to have a store local to you. One of the best things these stores have to offer are their low prices and discount items. While their prices are already low, you can get an even better deal if you use their coupons. You can find a link to print their coupons right on the website, so definitely do that before you head to the store. They also have a membership club you can purchase for $29.99 that gives you extra discounts. I can't say if it's worth the price or not because I've never tried it out. I didn't think this would be a place that I would shop very often, to be honest, but after walking through the whole store, both Mr. Wicked Prepared and I saw quite a few things that piqued our interest. So I definitely think I'll be back. Let me know down below, do you have a Harbor Freight near you? If you're a member of their Inside Track Club, how worth it would you say that's been? And what are some of your favorite and least favorite Harbor Freight items? What prepping items did I miss? If you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me a tool emoji down in the description box and check out this video next to see all my top prepping picks at Walmart. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.